This on or is it off?
You could turn it on, but we have these little mics, so you
So I don't need it?
You might not.
Do I need this on me, physically on me, or no?
It wouldn't hurt. You could.
I can take it off.
Sure. Well, without further ado, I want to introduce you to Jennifer Modeen. And we met, actually, I was in 8th grade and she was in 7th grade at Sacred Heart. I think it was volleyball practice, I sent this to the other class. And even though, like, since college, you know, lives kind of take you in different places, I kept hearing about all these wonderful things that she was doing, especially with in a variety of places that she'll tell you about, but especially in the Grand Forks public school system, really being an instrumental force, and I'm using that word force, to really help the homeless, foster kids. She's just a wonderful advocate for hundreds, if not thousands of people, well, definitely thousands of people, especially in Grand Forks. But she is going to be talking with you, and I told her that you guys are all education majors, you know, juniors, seniors typically, and I did give her your questions. And so if you know, this is a great opportunity. You're having one of the best people come and talk to you about some of these issues that you will be dealing with in a couple of years. So it's not a question of if, it's when, and probably sooner than later. So I encourage you to ask questions and be involved, and she's going to do a wonderful job. And with that, let's welcome Jennifer Modeen.
Okay, so the questions that all of you submitted were really, really well put together, well thought out. So we can do it one of two ways. We can sort of go through and then you can just ask those questions as we proceed through the presentation. I'm not going to read slides off to you. I just don't do that. We'll talk more about my experiences, my stories, but I want to answer your questions too. So we have till what time exactly?
Probably until, if you do, I'm hoping that this class is going to have even more questions. So let's see, about 1:40.
Okay.
Is a little
And you can ask those questions to me during the presentation if things come up when I'm talking about things that you don't understand or you want to ask questions about. It's super important. Especially as education majors, that we make sure that you know what these current trends are. It's interesting about the school-wide behavior plan. There's a lot that's happening right now across the nation around behavior and kids. And that's why I put this book over here, Lost at School, Lost and Found. Highly recommended that you read those. We're implementing Dr. Ross Green's model in the Grand Forks Public Schools. Very different than probably what you're getting in your education, which is sticker charts and behavior plans and checklists and things like that. We don't do hardly any of that anymore. So enough about that. So my name is Jennifer Modeen. I work in the Grand Forks Public Schools. I am the district homeless liaison. So I'm responsible for making sure that the education of kids experiencing homelessness in the Grand Forks Public Schools, about 250 students last year. And we'll talk a little bit about their rights under McKinney-Vento law and why educators should know about that. And then also the district foster care liaison. So I'm responsible to make sure that we're following the laws regarding the safety, stability, school access, and school of origin for children in the foster care system. This is very, very new law under the Every Student Succeeds Act that we need to pay attention to, we need to be following. So I'm responsible for making sure that all 18 of our campuses follow that law. In addition, I'm a school social worker at 2 North End elementary schools. I used to be at 3, now I'm at 2. So that's West Elementary and Winship Elementary. West is the one that's tucked in the corner of UND campus. Sort of, some of you may be familiar with it, sort of in the corner there. We have a lot of specialized programs there. We have our emotionally disturbed classroom. We have our preschool special needs. It's a smaller campus. Winship is the other North End elementary school. It is a magnet school for all our English language learners. So we have kids from 40 different countries, speak 30 different languages that come to Winship Elementary School every single day. So out of about 240 students they're bused in our magnet program. So I serve those 2 schools. In addition, as if that wasn't quite enough to fill my plate, they also, the school social workers in the Grand Forks Public Schools are contracted with the Human Service Center. So I serve children with severe emotional disturbances. Many of those kids are on IEPs, some of them are not. They are they're eligible for a program that we offer called partnership or care coordination. And when you think about that, just think about an umbrella, and you think about the mental health care of a student, ages 5 to 18. There's kind of that point person. I'm overseeing the mental health care of that student. So interactions with the community, therapy, accessing family therapy, making sure the IEP is in order, making sure we have doable goals for that IEP, making sure that student is learning skills. And again, that child has to have a psychiatric diagnosis of severe emotional disturbance, okay? So I have a caseload that's in any one of the 18 campuses for that as well. Mostly today though, we're here to talk about oh, here we go, this isn't gonna work. Okay, so we're talking about foster care and homelessness, so I'm just gonna start with this. I'm not gonna show you the whole video, just a little bit, so you kind of get a flavor for what it's like for kids experiencing homelessness. Can you push that? Can you guys see that okay? Excuse the cheesy music, but I think this is the most true to life from kids that I've known, what they say it's like. That's why I use it, sort of cheesy, like flute music. So there's a lot more in this video, but what I will tell you is that I easily, when I watch that video, can put kids' faces that have said very, very similar things in the Grand Forks Public Schools. So we had 250 students experiencing homelessness in Grand Forks Public Schools last year. That's a higher population than they see in the Fargo Public Schools or Moorhead. We have the highest poverty rate in the state of North Dakota in Grand Forks County. Right? So where do we think kids who are experiencing homelessness, where do we think they are living? So if you think in terms of you're teaching a classroom, you come to find out that a child is homeless, and we can talk a little bit more about what we're going to do around that, but where do you think they are? Where do you think they're living? We sort of, like we have those stereotypes of people experiencing homelessness, like we think New York City, we see this elderly woman, she's pushing a shopping cart, and she's maybe talking to herself, maybe suffering from schizophrenia, or maybe if you're downtown having a couple beers on a Friday night, you might see one or two guys from the Mission hanging outside, Joe Black's or whatever. But what about kids? Where are they? Where are the kids at that you're going to have in your classroom? Anybody know? Yes, ma'am.
I kind of have an interesting point of view
Yes.
because
Yes, tell me.
when I was a junior in high school,
Yes.
my mom and I actually became homeless. So we were just staying in friends' homes.
There you go. Doubled up.
and
Yep.
Also like a motel for a while.
Yes. It's exactly where our
And
kids are.
then I ended up here with my grandma.
Awesome.
And then my mom has been living with like friends and in motels and stuff
Yeah.
since. But
Thank you for sharing that. So did everyone hear what she said about her experiences as a young person? And they were doubled up. So what does doubled up mean? What do you think that means? Because there's 1.3 million homeless children in our educational system. 1.3 million that don't have a safe, adequate place to go, or if they do, it's doubled up. So what that means is that if I decide that she can stay with me and she can bring her two kids in, you're not on the lease, so anytime that I don't want you to be here anymore, I can kick you out. Okay, so that's not stable, because if you're staying with your boyfriend and you're both on the lease, he can't just tell you to leave because you're on the lease, right? But if you're not on the lease and someone says, you take your two bratty kids and get the hell out, guess what? You're on the street. And that's what happens. So 98%, especially in rural practice, which is where we are here, this is called the rural world, right? The wide open spaces of Grand Forks, North Dakota, the vast majority of the kids we're going to serve is going to be doubled up. They're going to be in someone's basement, they're going to be on someone's couch. We have a homeless shelter here, yes. We have one shelter for women and children, and it's always full. It's located across from CNR Cleaners, and that is it, my friends. And every time I've had a family literally saying, I'm going to be on the street tonight, that there has been no openings, or rarely. Okay, the other shelter we have is Community Violence Intervention Center. But you have to be a victim of domestic violence to access that shelter. So if you lose housing or you're evicted and you don't have a domestically violent past or relationship, you cannot access shelter there. And then we have the Mission, which is what everybody thinks about when they think about homeless. The Mission. But the Mission is not for children, and children can't go there. Okay? So there's this law, and this is a very important law, and I don't want you ever to forget this law. McKinney-Vento law, and it is a federal law. So you end up in some hodunk North Dakota town and they tell you that doesn't apply here, that's a lie. The federal law always trumps state law, always. And what McKinney-Vento law does is 5 things, okay? It talks to us about how we identify, so how do we serve this young woman here? How do we create school stability? What do we do about school enrollment? All right, and then how do we support these students as educators? And then how do we make that decision about where they're going, what they're doing, whatever. This is big. Now, will I tell you the truth about the law in the state of North Dakota? Not everyone follows it. It's been around since 1987. That's scary. Really scary. Okay? So, school stability, what does that look like? So for kids who are experiencing homelessness, let's say in a district like Grand Forks or in LA Unified that has 100,000 kids, or Chicago or whatever, what happens is if a child moves location, so I'm doubled up with you, then I'm doubled up with you, then I'm doubled up with you, you gotta have a school move every time because you have a different attendance area. That happens to kids a lot. It doesn't matter if you're in high school, middle school, or elementary school. All the research says that is not good for kids. We do not want to move kids. So when these other outside factors are happening, as educators, like knowing that that child can stay in this school. They don't have to move. Just because their mom moved, they don't have to move. As long as their parent, of course, supports that, which 99.9% of parents, once they are informed of their parental rights, and they know that they don't have to listen to a school person when they tell them their kid has to move, will say, I want my child to stay at this school. So that's school stability. So as an educator, it's important to know that language and understand it. School of origin, this is another word. School of origin is where that child laid its head at before they became homeless. What school was their home base? And if you think about it, a lot of people will say, oh, it's their kids are so resilient, they're fine. She's so cute. She just took her little backpack and went to the next school. But if someone said today, okay, I know you like UND, but you have to go to NDSU for a while. I mean, you're fine. Just grab your stuff. And then you went to NDSU for a while and attended their education, and then they're like, just go to Minot State. I mean, you're okay. You're cute. You're good. You got a bag. You're fine. Just go to the next school. That doesn't feel very good. And what the research says, not just whatever, it takes 6 months for a kid to recover from a school move. Why is that? Well, if you look at the educational system, a lot of times these kids aren't attaining very high academics, so many of them are on IEPs, which they shouldn't be, but that's a whole nother lecture. They have a harder time trusting people. There could be some behavioral difficulties, mostly because of trauma. But it's really, really important that we focus on school stability. School access. This is mostly for our unaccompanied. Yes, sir. Please. Yes,
Sorry,
sir.
when
No, please. I want questions. This is like super boring to have someone just like talk to you.
okay, when you said the parent had to move or could move, but the kid stay behind, does that mean the kid just stays in those motels and those?
No, what I meant by that is like if he's my son and him and I all of a sudden we get kicked out, okay?
Yeah.
And then she says, yeah, you guys can come stay with me. So we're geographically moving to a different attendance area, so we're still together. It's just normally they would make me move schools. This way he can stay at the same school. He doesn't, even though we're going to a different attendance area.
Okay.
Because you know why? Here it comes, the almighty dollar. Because who's gonna pay? That's why everyone freaks out and they just say, well, you just go over there. Just go over there. It's like, no, we want to keep that kid in their school of origin for that stability piece.
Right.
Okay, so very good question. School access. So unaccompanied homeless youth. Unaccompanied homeless youth are children not under the care of a parent or guardian that are accessing the educational system. A 14-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old, who, for a myriad of reasons, and you can imagine as a social worker, I don't go into conversations with 16-year-old girls saying, so I don't get it. Like, why are you not with your mom? Like, everyone should be with their parents. Don't you go to Sioux hockey on the weekends? Isn't it all great? That's not how I approach that. If a child's trying to attain education and says, I'm not with my parents right now, I'm unaccompanied, then I'm making sure they have food. They have, I can't give them shelter, but I give their food, transportation, school supplies. Then usually over time, that student will share what's going on. If there's a child protection issue, of course I'm a mandated reporter. And so of course I would do that. Sometimes there isn't child protection issues. There's just situations that elicit, sometimes the parents kick them out and they say, you know what, I don't care if you contacted child protection, I'm not gonna have her back in my house. So, but that child is still accessing and wanting to access our educational institutions. And so we don't wanna say to them, oh, you can't come because you don't have your birth certificate. You better go back in with your creepy mom's boyfriend who sexually molested you to try and look for the birth certificate. It's like, no. If she wants to come to school, she comes to school. That's just how it is. And then the school social workers, we have social workers in every building in Grand Forks, not full-time, but we're responsible for making sure that paperwork we find and we do that paperwork. So it's not like, because secretaries would get really agitated if I said, we don't require it. We do require it. It's just a matter of I, as the school social worker, is going to help you get it. I'm not going to say you can't come to school until you show me a photo ID. I'll help you get that, but I'll still let you enroll. So that's the other big one. And of course, long-term support. So this is our numbers. Like I said, 38% are free and reduced. Are any of you familiar with the backpack program? Yes, are you? Awesome. So the backpack program is in a number of our elementary schools. It could be in more, but what it does is it provides food for kids for the weekends. So I have a number of kids. The mission doesn't pay for it. If any of you go to Red Pepper, that's a big, that you see the Pep It Forward jar, that's for this program. We now started a new thing with the DECA program at Red River, where we're gonna do a grab and go for middle and high school students where there's no, this isn't like a shaming, blaming thing. We don't want people to know, if you need to come and get like some snacks or some granola bars or something, we're setting it up so kids at the middle and high school levels can access that. If you need deodorant, whatever. So that just those students came to me and said, we want to do more for the students in our school. We're noticing that that's, so there's a significant need there. The fastest growing population of homeless is not the 70-year-old Iraqi vet or whatever, or the Vietnam vet. My husband's a veteran, and they've pretty much eradicated veteran homeless. Why? Because they put a lot of money into it. It's children under the age of 6. That's the highest number of growing, the fastest growing population age of homelessness in the United States. Yes, ma'am.
Back to the backpack thing.
Yes.
Do they have like certain requirements that students have to meet in order to get like the backpack?
We, this is like some of the, and you'll find this out when you get in education, like sometimes there are things that you can sort of, like wiggle, move through. And so there was some dialogue a number of years ago about making it just for free and reduced kids. But what the principal and I had a dialogue about is the fact that there's so many kids that kind of slip through the gaps that maybe don't qualify but still don't have enough. So what we did is we opened it up to anybody. We sent the letter home and there was no judgment. We just said, if you want to be a part of it, sign up. And at first we thought we were gonna have to like hide this stuff because we thought, oh, other kids will know and then they'll, it's like, we have 85% of our kids participate. So it's like, people are like, how come I don't get, it's like, dude, your dad drives like a really nice car. You're not gonna get graham crackers. You know what I mean? I don't say that to them, but 80% of our kids are getting these bags. So obviously there's a high need. So we keep it really, and like even when I do, Hope Church, did a huge donation for us of winter boots and mittens. Beautiful boots, like boots from Shields boots. Like, we're not playing. These aren't Walmart boots, these are nice. I just said to any kid that needs boots, you come into my office, we have a little storage area, anyone can have it. I just really want parents and kids to feel this isn't, no one's judging you and whatever. And so I did that with school supplies in the fall. I just laid everything out and said, you take what you need. You need a backpack, just take it. And that's really, I think families feel really heard and welcome that way too. Okay, can you play this? This is a story of I'm sure you'll relate. Maybe not the athlete part. Yeah, sorry about the infomercial or whatever before. And it's not help that. It'll pass in there. Usually can do like skip ad, but I don't know why they're making us watch the freaky alligator all the time. Huh? Yeah, I've seen it a number of times. Okay, now you can turn it back up. Okay, so I wanna say something about that in regard to educators. Because I'm blessed to have spent the last 15 years working with educators. So it's really important to understand that you cannot fix issues like homelessness or children in foster care or sexual abuse or poverty or how someone comes into the world or things like that. But what you can do is pour into a relationship with a young person. And I will tell you both from my life experience, what I see every single day is that, and what we know now about brain science. Matter of fact, I just had a panel with educators literally at one of my schools last night where I said, is there no greater job in the world where you actually get to rewire a kid's brain by what you do with that child? Like, that's amazing, right? Because we've all seen and done things that have been difficult, but you can think about that educator in your mind that was a complete jerk that you will never forget, that you hated, that didn't like you. Maybe if you don't have it, I mean, I certainly do. I can name her right now. She used to embarrass me. She was not on Team Jennifer. But then I can also think about that other educator that taught me something about myself, about my capabilities that I couldn't even see within myself, and really invested in me as a human being. That's the best thing you can do for kids who struggle in these areas, is invest in them, set high expectations for them, but really be there and listen to them. And I think that I see educators every single day that do this with a great amount of passion. And even though those kids have difficulties, and yes, we need to advocate for them, I care about these things, know for yourself as an educator that how you care, love for, respect, and really stick with them can make a huge impact, huge impact. I want to say something about eligibility because this Jaime video resonated with me because I received an email from a student, a high school student who was a 4.0. He was an athlete and he had tried to access help because he was homeless and had not received any. And he actually found my name on a website that I didn't even know I was on, and sent me an email and said, hey, I need help. And when I went over to meet with him, it was the most humbling thing I've ever done in my life because I was like, oh my God, we have completely failed you. You have just been flying solo. You're freaking 4.0. How are you doing this? Obviously a very resilient young man, but he needed help from me for a number of things, and now he's a junior at UND. I just texted him the other day, doing very, very well, but not without some struggles. But he was highly motivated. So eligibility, we talked a little bit about this. How are you eligible for McKinney-Vento? If you lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence, there's no particular money that you get, but what it is an educational law to protect you. So you have rights as a student where you don't, again, and you have transportation. So it's our responsibility, the Grand Forks Public Schools' responsibility to transport you to your school of origin. That is big. Yes, sir.
So since there's no funding,
Yeah,
so does that then fall on the community?
Well, what happens is the federal government's really good at putting out mandates and then they don't give us any funding to do it. But we've done a number of things. So the federal government, what's called Title I funds, they make you set aside a certain amount of money due to your homeless numbers, but that can get burned up really quick. So then we worked on developing a relationship with City Area Transit for the busing system, but they have federal regulations that they can't reduce their rates. So it's just a blanket fee, that's what it is. So then I'm in front of Rotary groups, I'm in front of anyone who will listen to me. Bremer Bank made a donation for $1,200 or $1,300. I've been out trying to get people to help, but the vast majority of that burden does lie on the public schools and we have to pay it. It's not an option. But if we can, because most people, when you see buses, you think that we have transportation. Because in Minnesota, how many of you born and raised in Minnesota? Yeah, it's free and everybody gets it. Holy God, do you know what that would do to solve my life's problems around this district if everybody could get on a bus and get to school? Now, if you have a kindergartner and you can't access the city bus for that child and there is no bus that goes to that school, what do I do? So we have cabs that pick up kids. I mean, I have a kid that's staying in a hotel right now, a very seedy hotel, that I have to do cabs, pick him up, pick up his sister, and then transport him to 2 different schools. That's costing lots of money. But the mom doesn't have a car, and there's literally no way I can ask that second grader to walk to school. Like, it's not feasible. Yes, ma'am?
Like public school buses aren't free?
No, they are not.
Oh, really?
They cost money. I know. Everyone thinks because they
Is
see
that
them.
like
So
a new thing or?
no. So Grand Forks Public Schools got out of the busing business quite a while ago. So Dietrich is the person who does it. By the way, if anyone wants to open up a business, if you could give them some competition, because they're the only game in town, so they get all the money. One bus company, they get everything. So what happens is our special ed students are required by law that we provide busing to them. And then our English language. Why do we bus our English language? Because they're at magnet schools. So they might be living way out by, the mall, and we bus them all the way over to Winship. You have to provide the busing. Because we're telling them you can't go to your neighborhood school, you have to go to your magnet school. Those are the two. Everyone else has to pay cash. And then some schools, so like Lake Agassiz, for instance, over here by campus or wherever we are, they have busing, but you have to pay. Winship, we don't, because everyone's supposed to be within a mile radius. So there's no bus that comes to Winship for an average kid. So it gets very challenging to provide transportation. My friends, like my homeless liaison friends in Minneapolis, they have entire buses that transport kids experiencing homelessness. And it also applies to preschool kids. There was a couple of really thoughtful questions about what do we do when we're serving, like when a child, we call it students in transition, when we find out from a parent, we've done a lot of work on this, you guys, on how we ask these questions. School secretaries, I'm training school principals, school counselors. You don't just go up to someone and say, sorry, I'm homeless. I mean, no one's gonna respond to that. And they're not gonna, well, she said no. Well, no, obviously. But what we've done now is we do this determination, we do an intake, we have them meet with a social worker, we're trained to assess all that stuff. And usually I say, tell me about your housing situation. Are things stable? Are they unstable? Because if someone might have done that with your mom or whatever, you might have had a much more open feeling, a respected feeling, instead of this shame-based kind of like, oh, you know what I'm saying? So that's my number one thing, whether you're a child in foster care, whether you're homeless, it doesn't matter what color your skin is. I gotta move on to my foster care. Every kid deserves to be treated with dignity. Every kid has to have access to, this is unaccompanied homeless youth that I worked with. Everyone should have access to education. Okay, so foster care. What's interesting about foster care, I'll put this up here too. So, and I told you I wouldn't read the slide to you, but okay. 3% of kids who have interacted with the foster care system graduate from college, you guys. That is absolutely a crime. What in the hell are we doing with these kids? Like, that's not because kids who experiencing foster care aren't intelligent or motivated or they don't want to go to college. I think it's because we're failing them in the educational system. So what's happened,
She's right.
yeah, go ahead. We got like 4 minutes. Oh. I think for sure the most resounding, like I said about the relationship piece, but the most resounding thing to remember about children who are interacting with the foster care system is that it is not their fault that they are there. And they do get the short end of the stick. There is no question in my mind they get the short end of the stick. And so when they come to interact with us in the educational system, what can we do? Can we affect the child welfare system? Probably not. As a social worker at this level in the community, do I try to affect change there? I absolutely do. But for you, from the educator standpoint, like what can you do as an educator is continuing to pour in, to understand, to have sort of that trauma lens. I don't know how many of you have you guys received any training on trauma-informed practices in schools, that kind of thing? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Okay, that could be another thing we could talk about, but there's a growing trend nationwide about how we really look at kids that are struggling to understand that the brain of a child who's had significant trauma is going to be different than the brain of a child who is not. And what's important about that is that's not a defeatist, like, oh, it's terrible. It's a hopeful thing because as an educator and as a caring adult in their life, you can make a significant difference. But how they're interacting with you on the front, they might not trust you. They have reasons not to trust you. They might be angry. They have reasons to be angry. You would be angry. I'd be angry. It's that compassionate care and how we treat all these kids with dignity that will make the biggest impact. So what happened was, I don't care about that. We can't do that. Okay, so the foster care law that just came out under the Every Student Succeeds Act is that what happened is in Fostering Connections, which was a child welfare law in 2008, had these protections for children in foster care, just like homeless kids. They're two separate things. So children in foster care are not homeless. Children in foster care are considered the parental unit, which would be the county of Grand Forks. So county of Grand Forks is providing their parenting. What happened was that law in 2008 was never fully followed. The law says, stop moving kids around. We need to have school of origin for kids in foster care too. So if you're in foster care and you're staying with me and I'm sick of you, and I say, I'm tired of her, she's got a bad attitude, and then we move you to his foster home, you'd have to move schools. That is not good for kids, right? Just like homeless. So now what's happened is, because they didn't follow that law in 2008, child welfare didn't, now the Department of Education says, just a minute. Here's what we're gonna do. We'll make it just like McKinney-Vento, but we'll call it foster care protections. And we'll have a foster care liaison, just like we have a homeless liaison. They're not supposed to be the same person, but no one follows that rule. And we're gonna protect you now. So now what happened, in August of last year, all hell broke loose in the Grand Forks Public Schools. Why did it break loose? Well, because they were trying to move all these kids. It's school time to move kids around, got burned out of this foster parent, went to juvie, we gotta move, and it's like, we were like, that's not happening. And they're like, what do you mean, Well, we have a law. And in order to follow that law, we have to do a determination of best interest. And you know what the determination is? What's in the child's best interest. Not what's in the foster care system's best interest, God help me. And not what's in the foster parent's best interest. I know it's tough, but it's in what's in the child's best interest. It's not even what's in the school's best interest, the child's best interest. And so what that has done, just by following that law, it has done something really good. Just in our tiny little district here of 7,000 kids, we've stopped like 70% of our school moves. Just by saying, okay, let's do a determination of best interest. I just got off the phone with a social worker this morning. Let's calm down before we move kids. Let's think about this. What does the child want? Have you talked to the fourth grader? Does the fourth grader, would they like to stay at their school? Has anyone asked them? These really basic sort of tenets about how we respect the rights of children weren't being done. And so what that determination of best interest then is, so the school and the county, they have a dialogue. Now, can the school lose? Absolutely. County still trumps the school, so because they're the parent. But when we have that discussion, we can slow things down. We can advocate. We can say, oh gosh, I know Julie, she's a junior, she's involved in all this stuff. Moving her to a different high school, that would not be good. Like, can we make this work? Because again, what happens? Transportation. So under federal law, the Child Welfare Agency, has to transport that kid to their school of origin. That was in the law from 2008. It's important to read laws, so you know how to inform practice, right? So now, the only time, but what Grand Forks Public Schools has agreed to do is if you get placed in a non-licensed foster home, so let's say you go to your best friend's mom and she's not a licensed foster parent yet, that is the time where they can't access those funds. So then the Grand Forks Public Schools has says, we will help pay them. We will help. So we can keep that child where they need to be. So foster care, homeless, 2 kids in transition, kids experiencing homelessness, 2 separate, but they have now very similar protections under the law in education, which is a very, very good thing for kids. That's where I'm gonna end because I know I'm over because I wanna make sure that I get to questions. Can you think of the ones, I tried to go through all these and kind of fashion my lecture around these questions, so was there anything that I missed that you're thinking of that, do you guys even remember what you said? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so, like, I was told about how, like, the district or whatever
Yes,
provides, like, the help
yes,
for kids who are,
Yes.
like, in transition.
yes,
Like my mom and I were.
exactly, yep,
But, like, my mom didn't call, so then there wasn't really anything else to do except, like, you know, try to pass exams. Because, like, we were even, like, kicked out of the one place, like, the Thursday before final exams.
yeah,
So then that was kind of,
it's really hard.
yeah.
And there's a lot of kids like you. So what we've really tried to do under the identification portion as school social workers, like if I take off even my homeless hat and I just put my school social work hat on, my job is to make sure that every marginalized kid has a place at the table. So I'm always looking, my ears and my eyes are open for any kid. So my hope is, I know we don't get all of them, but my hope is we can get to you, we can find you, we can come to you and say, okay. And I've had that sometimes where parents have been maybe upset at first, but once I explain to them why I'm having the conversation, that it's about their education, their child's educational well-being, 100% support. You know, you can't go into those and someone had a really good question here about how do we keep parents involved? You keep parents involved by treating them well. And you keep them involved by being trustworthy, because a lot of these parents have not had a good experience with the educational system. That's not your fault as an educator, but I see teachers do this all the time. When they start to build that bridge, parents show up. It's like they answer your calls. They care. I've never met a parent that doesn't care about their child's education. I've met parents that don't like to come to school because they feel judged or because they feel like people are putting them down. But once we break that barrier and I say, no, this teacher can, like, please come and sit with us. Like, we are a team, and that's not something that's just written in a book that you can kind of fake. But if you actually believe that, parents will come. They show up. I've got parents that freaking bike to come because they don't have a car. I mean, it's awesome. So you get the power to do that. Once you have that openness and you want to build that relationship, really good things happen. So I hope we don't miss anybody, because I don't want to ever miss someone like you. We try to identify. Really good questions. Any other, I don't want to keep you over, I don't know what time your class ends, but what time does it end? Yes, sir, please.
Just a quick question
Please,
about
yeah.
school of origin.
Yes,
So,
sir.
Grand Forks, East Grand Forks.
Yes.
If a school, or if a kid's attending East Grand or vice versa,
Correct.
they become homeless, and then they have a residence listed with a family member or something on the
Yep.
other side.
Yep.
School of origin says they can stay,
And Minnesota, yes.
but if they
I
don't
just got
want to,
goosebumps because we had like 2 major cases like this where
I've-
all hell broke loose.
I've been hearing about stuff like that.
Yeah,
It's fine.
because guess what? A lot of people, I mean, they don't know the law. I will tell you, I've read a lot about this so that I know what the heck I'm doing, because when you go against a superintendent, you better know what the hell you're doing, okay? And I'm a lot more ballsy now than I used to be because I've been doing this for a while, but at first I was scared to death to be like, okay, I think we're supposed to let them stay there. Now I'm much more forthright. So the federal government protects that child. So if a child's experiencing, let's say they're going to East Side Senior High, all right, and their parents lose their housing, they get kicked out. Now they're doubled up with you and you're in Grand Forks. That child can stay in East Grand Forks, and that child can stay at that school of origin and finish out as long as they're homeless. What happens now with the transportation is those two school districts have to share the cost. Ooh, everybody's freaking out. Unless, I mean, sometimes kids have cars, sometimes they can do it, but if they can't, if transportation's a barrier, transportation can never be a barrier to get a kid to school. So if they say, I want to stay at Eastside Senior High, but my buddy, he's out by Red River, then we need to get that kid and we need to make sure we find a way. And then we just have to split the cost. The bill people work that out. I just don't, you gotta follow the law. But yeah, you're right. Federal law trumps, we don't do that because we do that because that's the law. So, but it's all for protecting kids' rights. The whole thing is about kids, right? And the interesting thing about being a social worker or a teacher is we're kind of low on the totem pole when it comes to power sometimes in districts, but when you learn to advocate and whatever, really good things can happen. Now we're in a really good spot where, I mean, all of our teachers know the law, and if they know that a kid is experiencing homelessness or foster care or whatever, we are all over it, and we are working together. I talk to the teachers every single day. They're in the loop. We're constantly talking. I know some of you won't have some of those resources if you work in different areas. They're lucky enough in Grand Forks, but find those people around you, those supportive in your team. However, whether you're a junior, whether you're teaching high school or middle school or whatever, find a team of teachers or other social work counselors that can support you because you'll spot those kids more than I will. You know, I get calls from teachers every day. I got this, I got this, I got this. And they're like, what do we do? He's in a hotel. What do we do? He's in a car. What do we do? Because you guys are with them more often than I am, even at high school when they're coming in once an hour or whatever. So, very good question. Any other parting thoughts? Was this helpful to you? Was this educational for you? Did you feel it was beneficial to understand? Do you know a little bit more than you did when you started? Okay, well then we accomplished some task here.
Oh, yes.
Okay, as you know, I'm always looking for like UND groups, people to help support like the Grab Bag program or anything homeless transportation, things like that. So I left my cards up here and then a little bit, just a brochure about our students in transition, the different social workers, where they're located. If you ever have a service project through a sorority or fraternity or any other club, you know, robotics club, whatever kind of clubs you're involved in campus, I'd love to partner with you because trying to help kids in the district, right? So, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Alrighty, so we will maybe see you Friday. Hopefully I will be in 113. I'm sorry, 112. And